Welcome to the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by British fashion icon Dame ZANDRA RHODES. ZANDRA began her illustrious career in 1969 with her first collection, and since then she's designed for royalty and superstars all over the world, including Freddie Mercury, Barbra Streisand and Diana Ross. We talk about all things luxury, what inspires her, her new book Icon, and many, many other things. Join us for an exciting conversation on this episode of the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast. I'm thrilled to be talking with Dame ZANDRA RHODES. ZANDRA, tell us about you and what it is you do for work and how you got to where you are today.
I'm originally a textile designer, a printed textile designer, who went to the Royal College of Art, where I got a first-class honours degree, and then when I left, no one would buy my work. They said it was far too extreme. And so I taught 2 days a week to make the money to live and gradually set up a company. And then in 1969, I put together a collection of prints and made those into dresses, because everyone said, oh, you're a textile designer, you can't be a dress designer. And I thought, well, I don't look that much dumber than a dress designer. So I put together a collection, and with letters of introduction, I took it to America, to the head of American Vogue, Deanna Vreeland, and she raved about it, featured it on Natalie Wood in American Vogue, introduced me to the top shops in New York, and my career went on to build from there.
Wow. I mean, that was an iconic time in New York in the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, it was the time of, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but, Studio 54 and Halston and Elsa Peretti and all of those that you've just named were all there, and they were all the people that I was spending time with and selling my dresses amongst all of their clothes. Wow. And I'm sure you've got some stories to tell about Studio 54.
I'm sure I can think of some.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. So, I mean, how different were those times, the late 60s, early 70s, and then how your career progressed to the 80s, iconic, people you dressed during the 80s, and then to now?
It's been amazing. I don't want to say bumpy. I mean, it's been an amazing ride of all kinds, going up and downhill. I mean, selling over America, having my own boutique in Bond Street, really grand boutique in 1975, having people like Freddie Mercury come into my little studio and making him the classic pleated top that you always think about. So it's been an amazing adventure.
We're talking about luxury because this is the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast. What are your thoughts about luxury? Because just thinking about the people you've worked with, the environment you worked in, Diana Vreeland, who was quite famous for her, she had quite a reputation as at the helm of Vogue.
A diva.
A diva, yeah. So I'm thinking luxury must have played a part, even maybe not explicitly, but how would you have thought of luxury in those days?
I suppose in those days, I was designing dresses that were considered an ultimate luxury, going through Halston, who introduced me. I made clothes for Lauren Bacall, who came to my little studio in Bayswater and stepped on a pin. Wow. So I've always made luxury dresses with all hand-printed chiffon, printed here in my studio in London, hand-rolled around the edges with little pearls dyed to match on the edge. So it's been sort of wonderful quality things for stars.
Mm. So tell us a little bit about your design process, because it's quite unique and quite particular, and that's of interest because you design in a very particular way.
I'm a textile designer, so love the fact that it's the print on the design that creates half of the effect. So, I mean, I did a wonderful dress on Lauren Bacall that was printed with like banana leaves that just flowed around her body as she moved. And it was all made in my little, hand cut in my little studio in Bayswater in London.
Right. So with the printing, you are known to print garments all in one. aren't you? So that you don't have lots of panels necessarily.
Yeah, well, I suppose I invented the technique of working out that the print design was actually, say, the main bodice. So you could more or less cut out around the print and there'd be a space for the neck and everything, almost without a pattern, allowing for grading. The pattern was the dress. So if you held your arms up, it might be in wonderful points, or the bodice might be a complete circle. So the print created the look of the dress.
Right. Do you consider yourself a craftsman or craftswoman, craftsperson?
I suppose I'm a craftswoman or craftsperson because it's a craft and I made the craft, but I consider being a textile designer and then making dresses out of my prints, that I'm also creating modern works of art. I don't distinguish whether it's a work of art like a David Hockney painting or mine is a work of art dress, and I believe it in like that.
There's often conversations about fashion and art, aren't there? Is fashion art?
I think fashion's definitely an art. It's a slightly different art with a few different rules that we have to look at, but you're making a wonderful sculpture for the body to wear.
And that's typical of Zandra Rhodes, isn't it? That you're wearing a sculpture.
Yes,
you are the sculpture.
You are the sculpture, and you're wearing a work of art that you can, and then equally you can put it on the wall and have it as a picture the rest of the time.
Oh, brilliant idea!
I've done that for some people, which has been wonderful.
Amazing. And tell us about your design process. So, because I know you're still working, and you are.
I know, aren't I lucky?
An avid worker. I know I've seen you in your studio and you kind of working quite busily. Tell us about your design process, how you start, where your ideas come from.
Well, I might have the idea that I want to do a collection with all wonderful flowers. So first of all, with my studio team, I work away and we do paintings with lots of flowers. Then I look in front of the mirror and I work out, do I like the look of that? Do the flowers look too big? Do they say the right thing? And then once I know what I'm doing, excuse me, I'm so excited doing the program, then you work out how it's going to print. Now, up until maybe 5 years ago, we would have then hand painted all the separations. But now we could do the separations on the computer. Right. And then have them put onto the screens.
Right. But you still use paint and brush, don't you?
Oh, I still use a paint, brush, Pentel, cut out pieces of paper. So it's still physically put together, and I have them all on the wall to look at to see if I like how it feels.
And that's quite a traditional technique that you then transfer or translate into something.
Yes, it's not put onto the computer until I'm convinced that I like it.
Right. And then how do you colour match? Because colour is such an important part of your work.
That would be done, when it was done by us, we'd then have the paper design and we'd work out the pigments to match it. But now it could be put into Pantones on the computer so that a machine could match it.
Right. So what inspires you?
My friends, wonderful friends like Andrew Logan, who I've been on sketching holidays with him or down to his studio where we're working. It might be suddenly, I might fancy doing a print with little animals in it. You know what I mean? So I take my sketchbook wherever I go. So, for example, I went to a wedding in Catania, Italy, with a wonderful girl, Ella, who got married out there because she worked on my book with me, iconic. And then I drew the opera house from my window, the things in the flat, going out, drawing umbrellas in the street. And then I might come back and it could become an umbrella print.
Wow. Okay. So it depends on where you are. I mean, anything.
Oh, exactly. It could be anything. I do go to places where I might not find it very inspirational. Then I start looking. Is it stones? Is it pebbles? Is it clouds? But it could be anything. You never know where inspiration comes from.
Yeah. So you mentioned the book. I just want to pick up on a few things from the book, Iconic. It's 50 things. Are those 50 things your 50 luxuries?
I wouldn't say they're 50 luxuries. I mean, one of them is my huge table that started with me when I built it in the 1970s with Alex and has travelled with me everywhere. Then I've got stones in the middle of the table where I was given an agate stone when I did a very successful trip to Australia. And ever since then, I've collected a bit of Mount Etna the other week. So I collect a stone. They gather dust like you don't know how. Now I've forgotten what I was talking about. It's so
about
interesting.
Your 50...
my 50 objects.
Your 50 objects.
So then, this happens to be Divine gave me this one Christmas. He loved Christmas.
Wow.
So he used to get everything that was Christmassy. So this was my Christmas animal from Sweden.
Yeah.
So it could be absolutely anything. My hat that I wore when I went for the Queen's Jubilee procession, and they had dames in jags, and that was my red, white and blue hat made by Piers Atkinson.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and Piers is quite an accomplished hat maker.
He's the head of my foundation, which is going to be, when I'm pushing up the daisies, he's going to be telling people about my work.
With your hat.
With what? Maybe he might wear my hat as well.
So would you consider that as being one of your luxuries?
Well, it's a luxury. I think anything that becomes close to you could be inspirational, helps set your life in sort of order of some way, is a luxury. They're all things that bring you to the ground and you love having around. And I don't care whether they gather dust. I'll give it a little bit of a
Well, not if Divine gave it to you.
Exactly.
So we think about, our fashion today, and typically you think about luxury brands, the big names, and they call themselves luxury brands. And I was interested in whether you think what you do as a craftswoman, if that is a different kind of luxury to what the luxury brands do.
I think, yes, I create, what I put into my work is everything that I can give, and it's my kind of luxury. Now, a lot of the time people might only involve luxury when it involves, say, precious stones or whatever. But I think luxury is something that you treasure. I think that we must be very careful today that we're not always trying to get new, but we concentrate on one piece of wonderful luxury that we can build around.
And is that true of the clothes that you've made in the past, or the prints that you produced in the past? Are they timeless?
I like to think that my prints are timeless. At the moment, together with Piers, we're saving everything, and a lot of things are going to different museums across the world. Like the V&A have already started working out what they want, but I've also did a collection based on the rock Urulu in the centre of Australia, and that was another dress that I did for Lauren Bacall. So one of those dresses and the prints that hang behind it are all with the Powerhouse in Sydney and the NGV, National Gallery of Victoria. So I've already sent those over there.
So these things capture the life and times of Zandra Rhodes, really?
Yes, they capture my life and I hope memorialise it.
Yeah. I've been privy to see some of the archive, and you have 6,000 pieces. Am I allowed to say you've got 6,000
Oh, yes,
pieces?
yes. We've got 6,000 garments that we're working out. We've already met with the Victorian Albert. We're meeting with the Cooper Hewitt in New York has already said that they see me as a very specific textile designer, and they've already given me a wish list of all the different textiles they want. They said, we don't collect the garments, but they want my Manhattan print, and they want my medal print that I first did for Heels Fabrics, so that my prints are being memorialised in different parts of the world.
Yeah. And I mean, there's the luxury in that, isn't there? I mean, there's such a
think
collection.
It's a luxury, and it's a wonderful privilege for me to have them want something like that and get all of this together.
Yeah. And I mean, just thinking as you're talking, I mean, you were talking about luxuries, not necessarily being a precious stone. It's much more than that.
Oh, I think luxury is appreciating the meaning behind things and why they're luxury. I mean, that's a very special way to think about it. It's lovely that you're asking me that. I think it's fabulous.
And I mean, well, then we go back to this archive, because what I also saw is loads of folders and files that start from one and capture the essence of all your collections from the first one. In
1968, actually,
right,
when I had the Fulham Row clothes shop. So I've got a few of those left. Then I go into my first collection taken to America, which is 1969, and then going right through really for my 60 years.
And each of those years, your textile design changed.
Each of the collections had to have new ones, even if I maybe did a recolouring of something, that I do that particular design and continue with a new one as well that christened that year. Like there's a Mexican collection and there's a seashell collection, so that they're all preserved and written about.
So what strikes me is that you were not a follower of fashion.
I like to think I managed to just about tightrope along as ZANDRA RHODES in amongst the fashion.
Yeah. And that's quite a unique position to be in, isn't it, really?
It's very unique, but sometimes you're down there and sometimes you're up there. But the whole thing I've always felt proud of is I existed. And I think, and particularly as an individual company in the UK, rather than having... It eluded me to be international, but on the other hand, I think my things are remembered in very specific ways.
Was writing your book a luxury?
It was a difficulty. It was a wonderful experience going through one's life and being asked to examine it. Ella was great on questioning me and things I'd not thought about or I'd not admitted, like my father, who really was, he was a lorry driver, and children are terrible snobs and they always think he should have maybe bettered himself, whereas he was probably a rock that had helped form me in a different way.
And you do talk about your mother in the book, and you talk about your father in the book.
My mother was an incredible influence. My mother was really exotic. I mean, if you think of this in the 50s, and she's got her hair held up, sprayed silver, which once she sprayed with fly spray and her head sprung. She kept saying, my head does sting, because she'd picked up the fly spray and not the setting lotion. Right. And she had platform green crocodiles in the 50s and little wonderful hats. She was just amazing.
So was she a dressmaker? Am I correct in remembering?
She trained making patterns at Worth in Paris before the war, then come back and then taught at Medway College of Art, where I never thought I'd be making dresses. I was doing textiles and painting everything. But in fact, it must have been her magical hidden influence that got me doing something like that.
So would that have kind of instilled this creative spark in you?
I'm sure she must have been the basis of that, and a hidden encouragement that I never realised what a rock she was behind me all the time.
And that's a luxury in itself, having parents behind you who...
It's a complete luxury, having someone that always encourages you. And once I said, if I'd have wanted to leave school, you would have let me. She said, I wouldn't really. But she wouldn't have told me that. It would have been hidden guidance.
Yeah.
Very clever. She was quite a brilliant lady.
Yeah. I think mothers, my mother's similar. It's like you wouldn't know, but she's pushing.
Very cleverly, like guiding you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I used to say, if I don't pass my exam, I'll have a nervous breakdown, she said, if you have a nervous breakdown, you're going to be the only one that has to get yourself out of it, so you better not have one.
Yeah. Wise words. Yeah. So today, you are working as avidly as before. Are the types of projects you do and the approach to the projects different to how you would have worked when you first started, for example?
Well, what happens really is I see a product and then I say, you know, I could do a good job for that. Like one of the early ones was IKEA. I thought, I'd love to see my stuff all over IKEA. So we had a meeting and then I designed screens and rugs and everything like that. And then one of the latest collections that I've done for a fabulous company called Celia B in Spain that sells all over the world. And it's very heavily leans on prints. And I suggested doing a collection to her, and it was a wonderful collection, which was, look, both very Spanish, very Zandra Rhodes, and very wearable. So it was fabulous.
So moving kind of forward over the next however many years, you still have projects in the pipeline?
Oh, yes. There's all little projects all through my studio, and I think, oh, that might be nice to do. But we're doing a complete takeover of Bath in 2026 with the museums and streets with banners. And then it goes on to De Montfort University, who are taking the whole of the records of my company so students can discover and see all my different licenses, how they worked, and they can be influencers for students there. It's brilliant.
Oh, it's interesting, the conversations I have with, I mean, as I mentioned, I've had quite a few of these conversations, and all the conversations I've had where we talk about luxury, it comes out in very different ways. And the conversation I'm having with you, luxury is coming out in a very different way because you've not spoken about a thing yet that is a luxury. It's about how you live, that's the luxury.
Oh, I think being able to live and do my work is luxury in itself.
Yeah.
And then hoping that the products that I get involved with, it's luxurious. And then a complete treasury of my work going to De Montfort University for future of students is, I can't think of anything more luxurious.
Yeah, and that's inspirational. It's amazing.
Yes.
Do you paint fabric? I don't know why I did that. But.
I have painted fabric, but it hasn't got the exactitude of printing. So, for example, one of the dresses that people always like is the dress that we painted bleach on denim and then made the whole thing happen. Like there's a statue of me somewhere behind you.
Yeah.
And that came out as a work of art, but that was bleach on denim. So that was painting on but it ate the brush away as well.
Oh, yeah, because,
the bleach was very strong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least if you drop bleach, you wouldn't notice.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's, I'm always, well, not always, I often find spots from cleaning. And then, I know, but that shirt
What did I do there?
Exactly. So often people, and this goes back to what I've just asked you, people often attribute luxury to a thing. Do you think that luxury is always about this tangible object?
Depends what way you want to put the word. I mean, to me, luxury is the fact that I'm able to do my work and continue doing my work. On the other hand, you can link it to products where you're looking through a Vogue magazine and it's talking about luxury, and luxury would be an incredible diamond bracelet. Or it could be a Zandra Rhodes dress. But, I think it's really that your mind looks at something and decides that this is something that you have to treasure. And in the fact that you treasure it, it becomes a luxury.
You collect quite a lot of stuff.
Definitely.
I wasn't going to use any other words as
and stuff.
and a collector. And I was just wondering, so when you think about the things that you've collected over the years, and this might go back to your 50 objects in the book, is there one thing that stands out to you as being your luxury?
Gosh, one thing perhaps in my book that's my luxury.
Or that you've collected over the years? Because, there's such a history of stuff. I just keep thinking about your divine Swedish horse and your Pier's hat. Or is it a hat or a fascinator?
A fascinator, or something not in the book is this wonderful lady in a crinoline chandelier that Andrew Logan made for me, or wonderful pots that I love objects and I collect them, and then they have to be dusted.
Yeah.
But they're luxuries that I have around that you can touch or treasure.
Yeah. And hopefully you don't have to dust them.
And hopefully I don't have to dust them.
Yeah. So they could be, it could be the chandelier, or it could be...
Could be one of the wonderful objects in the book.
Yeah.
Like you say.
But then they're attributed typically to somebody you know. There's a journey in ownership.
It's the journey. And I think often a luxury is because of the love that went into it somewhere along the way.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily get that with just going into a shop today and buying something. It's a fleeting
thing, or it's the joy that you put into it. Once you bought it, or once you've made it or treasured it, I suppose then it becomes the ultimate luxury.
It's living with it. It's the ownership and living with it.
Yes.
Maybe more.
Yes.
I was listening. I've become fascinated a bit late in the day to Deepak Chopra.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, right.
And I was listening to his 10 ideas or 10 notions of happiness, where he talks about, ownership and just going in and buying something. You get your 10 minutes or your 1 day or 2 days of happiness, but then you need to replenish that happiness and you go and you buy more. And that seems to me to be the complete opposite of what luxury might be, especially in the way you talk about it.
It's too fleeting.
Yeah.
Too fleeting. I treasure all my stones.
Yes, so you've got your table. We'll do a cutaway. We'll show your table if we may.
I'd love you to.
Your stones come from all over the world, I'm presuming.
The stones are from all over the world. Like I say, I have the original, which was the agate given to me in Australia, but I have... Last year, I went to Salzburg in the winter, in Austria, and we went down a salt mine called Hallein, in Hallein, and we went right down, and then when we came out, I bought lumps of rock salt, one black from maybe Tibet, I believe it was, and then a pink one from somewhere else, and they're sitting round amongst there, and I say to people, don't you like this rock? And you can lick it, and it's a piece of salt.
Right.
But it's there as one of my treasured possessions.
Yeah. And do people give you rocks, or do you have to only collect them?
I get given rocks. A lovely Canadian artist who paints a lot of my clothes, showing the pleating. He's been doing one of Brian May's jackets. And he said, I couldn't find a decent rock, so he's painted one for me.
Wow.
So I've got a painted rock.
Oh, okay. Because some people, when they collect things, they are the collector and nobody else can give them something or nobody else can add to the collection. I know we have some friends, and as a joke, when they got married, we bought them a snow globe, a Care Bear snow globe.
Oh, wonderful.
And then they gave us a snow globe back from their honeymoon. And every time I've travelled since then, this is now 20 years.
You've got a snow globe.
I've bought them a snow globe.
Oh, you can make them all work, you see, like that.
And they hate me for it because they've now got, must be 100 snow globes from all over the world.
They just have to work out a work of art sculpture that they can put all the snow globes, and now and again they can slightly bend it so that the snow just twinkles away.
Well, it should be on a movable shelf.
Maybe that, yes.
But I've said to them, nobody else is allowed to give them a snow globe other than me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So,
You see?
yeah.
They become a collector's item.
Yeah. And there's a luxury in that because of the thought.
Exactly, but then who knows what it turns into?
Yeah, dust.
That's very important.
It's a lot of dust for that. So, Zandra, I want to ask you about technology. Often we have conversations around how the luxury industry relies a lot on technology. So whether it's cutting, if you're cutting a bag, you won't cut one bag, you'll cut, in
a large number.
In a lay, you'll cut 50 bags.
Yes.
Do you think that has an impact on how we perceive luxury if something's mass-produced or if it's handmade, handcrafted?
If the person's lucky enough to be that they've done a design that's considered completely amazing, like a very special bag by a company, maybe, I don't know, Fendi or Gucci, if that is then very desired object, then it will become its own special work of art to that person. And they will treasure it and probably have it in a very special place and only use it now and again.
And that becomes their luxury.
And that is their luxury.
And do you think luxury can be mass-produced?
I suppose it can, because I think it's really what your mind has given that. It's like it becomes luxury because it's desired or because something in you gives it that status that it then lives up to.
Yeah. And that goes along.
So what is my luxury won't be someone else's.
Sure.
But that's quite nice. It does mean that there's a flexibility there.
Yeah. But should there be a flexibility?
Depends how hard and fast you're going to be with the idea of luxury. I mean, I think that luxury there should be something for all of us so that in our own lives, we can all treasure something and we can all have that built into our lives. It doesn't have to be because it's infinite money.
No.
It has to be either there's something original about it that you adore, that you want because you treasure it in that way.
And that's interesting because that's been our conversation since we started. It's not really about the one thing. It's about how you perceive that thing.
It's the perception. Yes, That's brilliant.
And the memory.
The perception and the memory.
Yeah. So a bit of interest from my part about your famous clientele over the years. You famously dressed loads of people, whether it's Barbra Streisand, Diana Ross, Freddie Mercury. I mean, the list goes on and on. Princess Anne for her engagement. Who's the most memorable of those famous people you've designed for?
In one way, it almost has to be Freddie Mercury because one always remembers that pleated top, even if he then ended up in a T-shirt.
Yeah.
But the movement of him coming up to my funny rickety studio and getting that magical pleated top and the memories, even having it reproduced for the film, are fabulous.
And then what, if anything, did the celebrities or the actors, actresses that you worked with, what demands did they have? Were they demanding around colour, around quality, around fit, or was it simply that they're having one of your garments that was enough for them?
I think that they came to me because they saw something in a design I was doing at that time that particularly said something to them. Like Lauren Bacall in the one-sided dress, or let me see, Diana Ross in the wonderful turban and the pleated jacket where she appeared at the end of her performance. They saw something in it that made them want to treasure it and made them feel wonderful.
Yeah. And have you seen over the years, so we're talking probably 40 odd years now, it's probably
My career is
more,
60.
60.
60.
Yeah. So what are the biggest changes let's not go back 60 years, because that's, I mean, we know that there's been considerable change in 60 years, but maybe the past 10 years, what's the biggest change you've seen in your industry?
I suppose the biggest change is printing is now hardly ever done by silkscreen. Now it will be done probably on a roller screen and done automatically and not by hand. Everything in my studio was done on a 9-yard table.
Yeah.
Whereas it will now be on a machine.
And would you still use that table?
We still can do things on that table,
Right.
you know, for special effect.
Yeah.
But it's not used very much.
And so you were talking earlier about, you design the textile and then you transfer it into a digital, into a digital print. Is that then digitally printed using disbursement dyes, or
if it's digitally printed, it will be done on a machine, almost like they print on paper, but they're printing on fabric.
And how do you feel about that?
I think it's just the advancement of how things are. Right. I don't think one can cling to the future. I can cling to my memories of what I've designed, and I can design designs that still look the same, and I should treasure that people still come to me, which is wonderful.
And that's the more important thing for you?
Yes, I think it's more important that I'm designing, that I'm not stuck in a corner, not doing anything and useless. Luckily, I'm not useless. So
no, obviously not.
Exactly.
I mean, because people, since your book, have people, or even before the book, have people continued to...
people are continuing to come to me, and so, I'm continuing to design, which is fabulous.
Yeah, and it's unusual to have a career of, as you said, 60 years. Especially in fashion,
I think we'll have to look back in history and see who kept going 60 years.
Yeah, they're not that many. I mean, I remember from even the 80s when I was at college, the early 90s. I mean, even people who are around then are not necessarily around now. I mean,
maybe they chose to retire, whereas I actually like painting on bits of paper and working in my sketchbook and coming back from my holidays with ideas.
And I mean, do you have a kind of a regime? Do you get up at a certain time and start working? And
I usually try and be in the office by 8.
Wow, that's early.
And work away. And I've got a studio, and we come up with different projects. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, 8 o'clock's quite early to start working. That's, I mean, that is amazing that you start working so early. I want to ask you about sustainability and around, people throw so much stuff away. And I just wondered if you had an opinion on, everything is fast. We've got fast fashion, fast product design, fast everything. And I wondered...
I think we should be much more aware, and it's cleverer if, yes, you want 1 or 2 things new so that you don't always feel... they don't say, oh, here's Sandra, she's still here looking, coming and going. It might mean that at one point I might wear a turquoise wig. You see, I could do something like that and make myself look slightly different so that there's a reason. But I think we shouldn't think that we've got to wear something new every season, because the world hasn't got the resources to keep happening. But you can have an aspect so that I don't always look the same, I hope.
Yeah. But does that matter?
Well, it only matters insofar that if I don't add to my repertoire, people are going to say, seen it before, I'm not going to buy anything, so that I have to keep going and being I hope, an inspiration to lots of the next generation.
Sure. And do you see items that you've made 20 years ago come back to you for, I don't know, if maybe somebody's caught a hem on a heel?
Luckily I do sometimes get that. Sometimes someone said, or it could be just that they then want to donate it to a museum,
Wow.
you know, so that they've kept it.
And how big is your wardrobe, dare I ask?
It's not terribly huge because some of it then goes into the historical.
Oh, okay.
So we decide, maybe that should have been really kept for the museum. So that Piers, who runs the foundation, is always saying we should do something just on your wardrobe, but we haven't done that yet.
Oh, well, there's another...
So there's another project.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. So the projects keep coming.
The projects keep coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. So you're never going to stop working?
I don't think so. I've still got to redesign my bathroom, which is in very bad need of being redesigned.
Right. Okay. So that's quite a big project then. I want to ask you about how you perceive luxury today. So what do you think of the state of play of luxury in the world in which we're living now?
I suppose luxury is two or three things. There's a luxury of possessions or what we wear, but there's also the luxury of products that we might want to treasure our skin or look after ourselves and feel that we're being luxurious, like going to a wonderful health farm so that we preserve ourselves for a bit longer. So I think, you know, you can definitely think of luxury as being able to treasure yourself as well as treasure the different objects that you might have. But I think that if you don't have something that you treasure in life and things that mean something to you, then you haven't got any contrasts and you might just be living in a boring landmass.
It's interesting. So some people say luxury is time. Some people say luxury is a thing. Some people say luxury is repairing something. And in, you know, the conversations, it's very nuanced. Because, you know,
it's how we each conceive it.
Yeah. So, and I say this, I think it's probably boring now to everybody who listens, but Olga Baluti, the cobbler from Baluti, said to me in a conversation I had with her, the best pair of shoes is an old pair of shoes. The worst pair of shoes is the new pair of shoes you wear to a wedding. And I thought...
And an old pair of shoes which you've got modelled to your feet and you still preserve them is rather lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like the concept of something old, something new, something borrowed.
Absolutely.
You know, and so some of it will be the things that you've treasured that someone's given you and you still treasure it and you still wouldn't get rid of it.
Earlier when we were speaking, we were talking about a lack of attention amongst younger people. And you were talking about the best way of working is working together in collaboration. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, when I was at college, I went to college full time and I was in there and you'd be able to see if someone on one side could design 10 designs and I could only design one. And I think we only learn to, one, live with each other and two, see what's around in the world if we're surrounded by people. And the minute we're all alone, everything has no meaning. Your luxury has no meaning if you don't have other people that can at least say, I'd love that. Or if they say, well, I don't think that's a luxury, but you need the other people to help you appreciate that it's a luxury.
Yeah. And that's important.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, you can see someone else's luxuries.
Yes. In all their glory.
Exactly.
I'd like to end, as I end all of my conversations, by asking you what your luxury is.
Oh, my God. What's my luxury? That's putting me really on the spot. What's my luxury? having the time to design and being able to design.
Brilliant, brilliant. Dame ZANDRA Rhodes, thank you so much for joining me on the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you to Dame ZANDRA Rhodes for joining me on this episode of the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast. And thank you to our sponsors, Intellect Books. And thank you, of course, for listening and or watching. And don't forget, you can catch up on all previous episodes of the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast on your favorite listening platform. And more importantly, don't forget to subscribe.